we are going to look at composite figures. So what does this look like to you? Two figures put together, right? Okay, so we're doing the same thing we've been doing using the volume formula. We will just either have to add the volumes together or subtract the volumes based on what our figure looks like. So for instance, what two figures do you see here? Okay, you see a cylinder and a prism, right? You should see a cylinder and a prism. So let's start by finding the volume of each of them. Okay, so let's find the volume of the cylinder. General formula for both of these is base area times height, right? For a cylinder, what do I replace the B with? Pi r squared. And what is the radius of my cylinder? Anyone know? 4. How'd you get 4? Okay, so we know all the way across this cylinder is 8. That's my diameter, which means my radius for that cylinder is 4. So pi times 4 squared. And what's the height of the entire cylinder? 8. It goes all the way back, and that distance there is 8. So in my calculator, I have 4 squared, which is 16, times 8. And for right now, I'm going to leave it as 128 pi for the time being. Are we okay with that? Yes? Okay, let's find the volume of the prism. So for a prism, this has a rectangular base. So it would be the length times the width times the height. What is the length and the width of, well, it actually has a square base. What's the length and the width of the square? 8 and 8. What's the height of the whole prism? 8. So 8 times 8 times 8 is 512. Okay, so I found the individual volumes. Now I have to think about whether I would add these volumes together or subtract them. Any ideas? Who says subtract? Freddie? Why? It's hollow. Do you see that really that cylinder is taken out of the prism? Okay, so we're going to subtract these two. So which one would we subtract from the other?
Subtract the cylinder.
Subtract the cylinder from the prism. So we need to do 512 minus this 128 pi. But we can't subtract 128 pi from 512. So this is where you actually have to multiply by 3.14 so we get a decimal for this 128. So 128 pi is really the same as 402 by, let's see, round to the nearest tenth, so 402.1. Are you okay with that? How I got the 402.1? And then 512 minus 402.1 is 109.9 feet cubed. So I'm subtracting the cylinder out of the prism because it's hollow. It's taken out. How did I get the 402? So I did 128 pi in my calculator. Let me see. There we go. $402.1. So if you're getting, some calculators just give you 120. Can I see yours real quick? Give you 128 pi. They don't give it to you in decimal form. So you need to find the button. Okay, way up here. Do you see? And it's going to be different on everyone's calculator, but this says FD. It has an F and then a couple arrows and a D. That means fraction to decimal. So for this particular calculator, I would hit second, and that FD, it pops up better. I'm trying to get, not a glare. There we go. So see the FD? If you click it, okay, seriously? Want to do it again? Your calculator sucks. Okay, so here's what you're going to have to do. 128 times 3.14. So you're really going to get 401.9, which means yours is going to be slightly different. You need to make sure you write that down. Okay? So if your calculator, because of rounding, I use the exact value for pi. For this one, I use 3.14. Rounding may be slightly different. So it's important to write down what you're plugging into your calculator so that I can give you credit even if it's slightly off from my answer. Okay? Are we okay with that? Okay, so let's look at this second one. What two figures do you see here? A cylinder and a prism again. So I would like you and your group or whoever to find the volume of the cylinder and the prism. So start there. All right, let's start with the cylinder. Who can help me find the volume of the cylinder? Jacob? Okay, so tell me what your formula was. Okay, so you have your pi r squared, your radius is 1, your height is 2. We know 1 squared is 1, times 2 is 2, so this really is 2 pi, right? For the prism, length times width times height. What's the length and the width of the base of this prism?
4 and 8.
4 and 8. And then my height is 5. And what'd you get? 160. Now in this case, would I be adding these volumes or subtracting? Adding. They're kind of just attached to each other. Okay, but I need this to be a decimal. So 2 pi, I'm getting 6.3. If you use 3.14, it might be slightly different. And if we add those two together, we end up with 166.3 centimeters cubed. Huh? So you're subtracting if things are taken out. So in this case, it's hollow. Like that cylinder was taken out of the prism. These two are kind of just attached together, so we're adding them because they're being put together. So if something's taken out, you subtract. If they're just being set on top of each other or attached, you add.
Can I just add it without turning it into decimal? Like 2 pi plus 160?
No. Well, what was your answer?
Does that have the same calculation?
Oh, you just did it in your calculator? Yeah, that's fine. So you can do it in your calculator as well. So I could do I'm trying to do it where you can see it. So I can do 160 plus 2 pi. And it gives me the same thing. Oh, except I plugged in the wrong number, so let's try that again. So 160 plus 2 pi, okay. 166.3, yeah. You can do it that way too. Okay? All right, why don't you do number 3 as well? What are you going to do here?
Add 'em.
Well, what is the shape? So you have cone number 1 and you have cone number 2. And Jacob said you're going to add them together because why? They're attached. Okay, so let's see what you get. Okay, for a cone, our base formula changes a little bit, or our general formula. Remember, if it comes to a point, we use the 1/3 out front. So 1/3 my base area times my height. And in this case, what is my base? Pi r squared, it's a circle. So I'm going to use 1/3 pi times the radius. Let's do the small one first. What's the radius of the small one? 6 squared. And then the height of the small one? 10. So 6 squared is 36. times 10 is 360 divided by 3 gives me 120 pi. For the larger cone, it's the exact same formula, except my radius is 10 and my height is 26. Okay, this gives me 866.7 pi. Did you get that? Now, do I need to multiply by pi for either of these? Do you know? I don't need to because they both have pi in the answer. So what I can do is just 120 plus that 866.7, and my answer would be 986.7 pi meters cubed. Okay, so if you don't need to multiply by pi, don't. Did you have a question?
Did you get it wrong if you did?
No, it's not wrong, but if it says leave your answer in terms of pi, and you need to. Okay, because we'll do this test on the computer as well. So this will be my answer on the computer, not it multiplied out by pi. All right, let's get this last one done. What do we see in this problem? Okay, so we see a pyramid. We're going to call it pyramid 1. I see pyramid 2. And I see a prism. So I have to find the volume of 3 things in this case. So let's start with this large prism or pyramid. Again, it's 1/3 base area times height. So volume equals 1/3. What's the base of this prism?
9 times
A square?
9.
Micah says 9 times 9. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the height of that pyramid? 18. So 9 times 9 times 18 divided by 3. I'm getting 486 for this first pyramid. Do we agree with that? Okay. Second pyramid. Volume, again, 1/3. It's a square still. What do you know what the base is? What the length and the width are? 9 times 9 again. If this whole thing is 18 and this piece is 9, then that piece has to be 9. And then we know back is 9 as well. And then the height of that pyramid? 16. So 9 times 9 times 16, all divided by 3. What'd you get?
432.
Okay. And then finally our prism. So that's just volume equals base area times height. My base is length times width. What is the length and the width of the prism at the bottom? 18 and 9. And what's the height of that prism? 2. Good. So 18 times 9 times 2. What'd you get?
324.
Are we okay with all 3 of those? What are we going to do with these? Add them, because all you're doing is stacking them on top of each other. So 486 plus 432 plus 324 gives you 1,242 feet cubed. 1,242 feet cubed. Any questions, comments, or concerns?